turnout though, because we got 8 people here, so that's awesome. Thank you all for coming in. So I'm just going to give a brief summary of last time. So we mentioned like project timeline, like everything with what kind of entails the project. So there's a session each month that you're expected to attend until we get the chickens. So one in January, one in February, and then one in March. So this is your February session, so this should be everyone's second session. We have 2 new joiners, which is Victoria and Cornelia, and they're going to be joining the project as well. So the next session is going to be in March on the 4th and the 11th, so that's a Friday as well, so you guys can decide on which one you want to attend. They're the same sessions that are offered, but just twice a month so that we can kind of break up the number of people that are coming out so that we don't have these really big groups. So Burton Wesley was supposed to speak today. He spoke last week, but he wasn't able to make it today. So Donna might kind of chime in with her own experience, but we're always trying to bring in mentors from previous years to talk about what they've learned over the project, and just what like the unique barriers are or the unique challenges are for raising chickens specifically here in Morley. Okay. We are going to be getting the chickens at the very beginning of April, so you can take the coops home whenever you want, like at any session. I know a lot of people are planning on taking the chicken boxes in the March sessions, just because then you have some time. You still have like essentially like a month to put it together, and then decide where you want to put it. And a lot of people were saying in the last session that the size is actually quite nice because it's something that it can be a little bit closer to the house and isn't going to have such a big smell because it's so easy to clean. So the smell that chickens typically have, the fragrance of them, is typically when the coop isn't being cleaned, and they're actually very sensitive to the smell. So they'll stop laying when they are not happy with the living conditions that they're in. So because these coops are extremely easy to clean, you essentially can just like move the coop over a little bit so that they're not near any of the manure, and then you can just clean that drop board. It's pretty easy, and then it fertilizes your lawn as well. So I think that will be kind of a big benefit for the fact that they're quite a bit smaller. Last week though, we had a lot of wind, and that made me think about this project a lot because I'm thinking about how the coops are gonna kind of survive with the wind. So with that, just like Burton, when he was looking at them, he was kind of saying like there's so many different ways that you can kind of reinforce it to the ground. So and then putting like sandbags on top, or putting like the mat that's at the front there that you wipe your boots on, draping that over the coop as like a wind block for the chickens. But again, it's kind of nice that you can tuck the coop near your house, whereas the coops from last year were so tall they couldn't really be that close. So yeah. So that's kind of the timeline. So you have a session each month, and then you get the chickens at the beginning of April. And then you always have access to me. So if you have any questions when you get the chickens or before you get the chickens, you can always contact me, and then I can kind of get you in touch with somebody. It can be from the community, would be my first preference, is kind of like, because we have so many people from last year that are willing to help out. And then if it's like a vet question or raising your own chick question, that kind of stuff I can kind of find the answers for too. And then as one more summary thing is about what's included in the project. The coop, a feed for a year, shavings for a year. You're going to get extension cords, you're going to get heaters, a heat pad for the chickens, a feeder or waterer, and then the 5 chickens. I'm still kind of assessing if we're going to do 5 chickens or 4, and I don't want to cut you short by any means, but it's just in terms of what would be a safe amount in that coop. Because it says it can hold up to 6 chickens. I strongly don't believe that. So I might just put it to 4, and then we can kind of maybe give you an extra month of feed or something like that, and feed and shavings. Because a chicken costs about $15, whereas the feed and shavings together cost about $50. So it would almost be more beneficial for you guys to get an extra round of feed out of it, but we can kind of talk about it. I am curious on what Egg Farmers of Alberta thinks about the amount of chickens that are in there, because I do want them to be, comfy. I don't want them to be crammed in there. A lot of people are excited about like expanding the coop out, so that's probably going to be a big thing. And that kind of leads me into the first kind of things that I wanted to mention about this month's session, is what Burton was mentioning about the runs. So what he actually does is he leaves the gate open, and the chickens are out free all day. And they know where they get food from, so they actually will come back at the end of the day and to get fed again. So you can train your chickens to do that, but it did take some work. And he would notice that he was almost like running after his chickens sometimes. And one of the first tips he gave was that if you are trying to catch your chickens, which I hope isn't happening all the time, but if it does, if you tap a chicken on the back, it immobilizes them. I didn't know this. So I don't know if anyone else knew about this fact, but you basically give them a good little like tap right on the back, and it just kind of freaks them out a little bit. And they just get immobilized, and then you can kind of grab them and put them somewhere. So just so you guys know that tip. The other thing too is that if you feel like your coop isn't safe enough against predators, or you're worried about weasels and coyotes, Burton's two big tips is that they hate the smell of peppermint. So like that in terms of predators, they hate the smell of it. Even mice hate the smell of peppermint. So if you do have access to getting like fresh mint leaves from anywhere, putting that around the coop actually really deters the predators. They hate the smell of it. So he was saying that once he started putting that out, he noticed a lot less of that. So that could also be an option too, for getting rid of predators. And he was also saying to avoid like killing any coyotes, because typically more and more keep coming back. I don't know if that's common knowledge, but that's what he's been noticing. If people do that near him, that more coyotes just keep coming back. So the other thing that I think Burton mentioned probably several times is that if your chickens start losing a lot of feathers, and I don't know if you've ever seen chickens when they are losing tons of feathers, he noticed that it was directly related to the amount of water they were getting. So if they're not getting enough water, they'll typically start like pecking each other, or they'll be actually cracking their eggs and trying to like drink the nutrients that are from the eggs. So just making sure they definitely have lots and lots of water. He mentioned it almost every single time he spoke about like you just got to make sure they get enough water, like make sure they get enough water. So that was a big one too. The molting that I was kind of talking about with them losing their feathers is mentioned in your booklet. So it goes over a bunch of different behaviors to look out for with chickens, because they could be really trying to tell you something, and a lot of the times it's related to what they're getting from their nutrition or from their water. So just making sure that they're getting that, or if they're bored. So you don't have to buy like expensive chicken toys or anything like that. Just cutting up a piece of cabbage and throwing it in the coop is like a really good way to just like keep them busy and occupied, because when they get very bored or they don't have enough space, they'll start pecking each other. So just making sure that that they kind of have something to, even like old CDs, like if you guys have old CDs at all that you're not using, if you hang them in the coop, they love to look at it. So pretty simple, nothing has to get bought. Making sure that this project isn't a chore. It's not about just getting eggs. It's about like you taking care of these animals and having them be almost like a part of your family. Because even Donna was mentioning like she's giving out names for all the chickens. Like you can decide, like each one's very distinct and has their own personalities. So it's kind of cool that way. In terms of kind of going forward and taking care of the chickens, we are going to make sure that anything that kind of comes up for you guys is what's going to get talked at the last session. Like, I really would like it if you submit any kind of questions or things that you feel like is still kind of unclear about raising chickens, because we can definitely get that addressed with Egg Farmers of Alberta, the feed store, and the vets that are coming next month. So they're all going to kind of come and speak. So those like kind of logistical questions about the vet, like Cheryl brought up, is if we need to get like chickens vaccinated. All your chickens are going to be vaccinated that you get. So not COVID vaccinated, but they're going to have all their shots so that there's no risk for you guys. The big risk is just like if you're touching the chickens with your hands and then touching your eyes, or touching your mouth. That they have, obviously it's like touching any animal and then touching your eyes, like there's that transfer there. But otherwise they have all their vaccinations, so they should be pretty good. Just because the birds will typically live up to 5 years. They might stop laying around 4, sometimes 3, depending on the chicken. So you're all going to be getting them right at 19 weeks. So they're ready to lay right there. So when we've actually delivered them, they have been like laying eggs in the boxes that we deliver them in. Like they're already ready to go. So that's been nice. And we are going to be, I was mentioning this before, we're going to offer the chickens on that day in April in 2 different ways. So either like Stoney Health can go deliver them, so that one truck is going to go and do deliveries. The other truck is going to stay at the health center, and you guys can pick them up. So, because we'll probably give like maybe like a 4-hour window, because the chickens aren't going to want to hang out there forever. But just like a 4-hour time frame where you guys can come and pick them up, because if nobody's home, we can't just like ditch some chickens in your coop. So if you are going to be out and about on that day, that you can kind of just pick them up from the town site, or if you are at home and you want to stay at home, then we can just deliver to you. So in the next month's session, I'm going to get all your feedback on that, on what you would prefer. And obviously you can change your mind, and we can, if last minute things come up, but that's kind of the plan. And then, yeah, so the chickens are completely ready to lay. I do have one participant from last year. She actually has 4 roosters now. And I don't know where she got these roosters, but she is really looking into how to raise chickens. She's got an incubator, because she wants to raise chicks and hatch them and everything. So we are trying to look into what vaccinations would look like for those chicks. There's 2 specific ones that they can get, but in Sixica they're doing a project where it's a community kind of chicken farm. So they're all raising the chicks and hatching them, but it's more from a community site rather than on people's property. And I was asking her, like, have you guys been vaccinating these chicks? Like, how does that work? And she said that they never got vaccinated. So it's not a need. You don't need to get the chickens vaccinated. It's just if you want. So just so you guys know that if down the road you want to hatch your own chickens, get the incubator, do that. Vaccinations aren't required. It's recommended, just because there's 2 specific diseases. One of them is Merrick's disease, and it can cause like these almost like welts all over their skin, and they can kind of be deformed once they grow, and it's really and it's really uncomfortable to see them grow and then to have to end their lives. Like, it's just not a good time. Like, so that's why she's very adamant on getting her chickens vaccinated, the previous participant from last year. But it's going to be an up to you option if that's the route that you want to go down. You don't have to, by any means. So just because we got a lot of questions. I think it was our group last time that had a lot of questions about if they were going to raise chicks, and like if they could get roosters. So just so you guys know. And then also there is a participant that's actually interested in old chickens too. So a participant that's in the other group, but he's in this round. he's actually kind of interested in just having like chickens once they stop laying as well. So just so you guys know that if your birds stop laying like in 2 to 3 years, that he's going to be your guy. He just wants to raise them. He's talked about how he just wants to have like more kind of things to do around the house, and that's what a lot of this project is for, is that if you find like family members, kids, things like that, you want to get them out of the house a little bit and just have something like that sense of purpose. That's really, really awesome, and that's really what the project is about, is just getting people outside, reconnecting with like the land as well, because you're going to be more outside and you're going to have like that sense of responsibility with having to get eggs every morning, having to take care of a chicken. It's awesome. So yeah. How tall the enclosure can kind of be is there's no defined point. I would put it around 10 feet would be great, and it does have to be reinforced from the top. So Eldra Snow was mentioning that last time, and Brian, that when they made their kind of enclosure, that they used chicken wire up top. You can use netting as well, because the big thing is just ravens and eagles that are coming in. They think that chickens look like a great stack. So it's just good to have something that can catch them. I would say about 10 feet high would be really nice. And then it can kind of detract some bears too that want to kind of climb it. So just putting up plywood is great, or yeah. Does that kind of answer your question? Yeah. It'd be really good if you could have like almost like a 30-foot square foot kind of area for them to play around in. Burton was kind of mentioning, like, if you're going to have them out and that it's not going to be covered on top, make sure that you're always home. Because he was saying that even when they were home, he could see ravens going for his chickens. So as long as you're home, you can kind of step out the door and kind of freak out the raven, and it's fine. But otherwise, it's just kind of don't leave them alone at night. The biggest issue I've ran into is not even wildlife for the clients. It's been the gate being left open. So I think I mentioned this last time as well, is that kids and grandkids just making sure that they close it. I would say that was 80% of the reasons any chickens didn't make it. The other one was just with 2 incidences with dogs. So that was the only time. But yeah, one with dogs and one with them freezing. So we got discounts last year for heaters. But if you're not able to pick it up, the chickens can't, like, even if they're in a really well insulated coop, like, they need to stay warm. So that's why we're giving everybody a heat pad this year, a heat lamp, and then the 100-foot outdoor extension cord. Any other kind of questions? Any kind of thoughts too? Because we're still in this stage where we're ordering things, so like if there's something that you feel like you would want to have to accompany your coop, we can kind of look into getting it ordered. If it's something from like Canadian Tire, that would be preferable. But I just want to make sure you have everything that you need, and that we're not kind of getting into June and July and then we're realizing that we need certain things. So I just want you to feel like you got everything. Because Jeannette was also wanting to come in and talk as well. So Jeannette was from the first year, Jeannette Wildman. So their coop is really sturdy and draggable, but the only thing is that it's so low, and it's hard to clean when you have to really actually like physically get in the coop, whereas this coop you don't have to get in it. So I have pictures of that one as well. So like when you are thinking about making additions to your coop and kind of customizing it, I just want you to think of these other things that were kind of issues in previous years, just so that we can kind of all just get better and better each year. The big thing, is when it's so low to the ground. So even like stacking your coop is a good way, can kind of just making it a little bit taller. 4-story chicken palace. But like it's just nice for them to have different things to perch on. They really do like that. And then making sure that in the coop, the nest box needs to be the warmest spot. So Eldra was kind of mentioning, and Brian, they had put a box kind of in their yard, and they couldn't find where the eggs were, and they were just searching around, and they couldn't find where their eggs were, and then finally they looked into this box, this random cardboard box, and all these eggs were getting laid there because that box was such a warm spot for them. So just making sure that if you are kind of frustrated because you're finding eggs around the coop or around your yard, try to make that nest box just a little bit warmer and cozy for them. And you can actually simulate an egg by putting like a golf ball or a ping pong ball in the nest box, and when they see that, they kind of start recognizing like, oh, I see what you want me to do now. So just using some kind of like a fake ball, white ball, that they can kind of just associate with where to lay their eggs. Yeah. Otherwise, did anyone have questions from the booklets last time? Because the booklets went over some things like table scraps that aren't helpful for kids, for chickens, like the apple seeds, or if you give them too much starch. Like if you were going to give your chicken oats expand, like, you know, when you cook them, they get thick. That's the same thing that happens to chicken, and if they eat too much of it, it can actually expand and cause them a lot of stomach discomfort and potentially like problems with digestion. So that's why this thing called grit acts as their teeth to grind things up, and it always has to get added to the feed. So the feed store, when they come next month, they're going to talk about how their feed is a blend. You guys don't have to worry about having proper ratios of anything. Is nice because it's nice to have a big egg, but it's a little bit of discomfort for the hen at some point. So if you do see that the eggs are getting too large, just kind of dial back either the ratio of your feed or certain treats that you give them. So for example, like frozen peas are really great to give to chickens, but they're actually pretty high in protein. So that can kind of lead to that when you're giving them certain snacks or treats. Or if they're eating like living things, like for example, if you're giving them mealworms, or Burton said that one of them had just gone in on a mouse. Thank you for coming in, especially on a Friday. And if you think of something last minute that you forgot to ask today, just let me know, and either I can get you that answer right that second, or if I think it's something that we can address at the next month's session, then I will get that too. So we won't sign up for the next month's session right now, but I'll send you all an email or a text, and then you can kind of decide later.